Wash the dishes well. You useless girl. That's the first thing I heard when I stepped into my parents' house after months of silence. My heart froze because that voice wasn't just anyone's. It was my father's. And the trembling little hands he was yelling at belonged to my 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. I stood there in the doorway, my hands gripping the bag of groceries I'd brought, every nerve in my body tightening. My parents didn't even notice me. My daughter stood on a stool, struggling to reach the sink. Soap bubbles clung to her tiny arms. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she tried to wash the dishes perfectly, dishes she hadn't even used. My sister's daughters, both wearing matching pink dresses, sat at the table behind her, laughing and filming her on their iPads. "Look, she's crying again," one of them giggled. And my mother? She didn't say a word. She just watched, like this was normal, like this was how you taught a child discipline. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. I was numb, like the ground under my feet had disappeared.
But then something inside me snapped.
"Lily!" I yelled, rushing forward. My father turned, startled. My mother froze. The laughter stopped instantly. I pulled my daughter into my arms. She clung to me, shaking. "Mommy," she whispered through sobs. "I'm sorry. I didn't wash them good enough." That's when I saw it. The same fear in her eyes that I used to carry when I was her age. The same house. The same voices. The same cruel words that once broke me. But not anymore. I looked straight at my father. His face was red, his eyes narrowed. "Oh, so you finally decided to show up," he scoffed. "You're raising her just like yourself, lazy and useless." Lazy. Useless. The same words he'd thrown at me my entire life. But he didn't know, not this time. He didn't know who I'd become. He didn't know that the useless daughter he'd thrown out 10 years ago now owned 3 real estate companies, 2 restaurants, and, irony of ironies, the very house he lived in. I took a deep breath, trying not to explode right there. "You yelled at my child?" I asked quietly. "She needed to learn respect," he barked. "Someone has to teach her how to behave." "By calling her useless?" I shot back. He smirked. Like mother, like daughter. I could feel my daughter trembling against my chest. I kissed the top of her head, whispering softly, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here now." My sister appeared from the living room, her arms crossed, with that same superior look she'd had since we were kids. "Amelia, don't be so dramatic," she said in that fake sweet tone. "Dad was just trying to teach her some manners. Your kid's too spoiled anyway."
Spoiled.
That word nearly made me laugh. My daughter, who shared toys, said thank you to cashiers, and saved part of her allowance to buy treats for stray cats. I looked at my sister, then at my parents, and finally at the 2 little girls still sitting there, laughing under their breath. And at that moment, I made a decision. A calm, silent decision. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't argue. I would end this quietly. I hugged Lily tighter and whispered, "Come on, sweetheart. We're going home." As I turned to leave, my father shouted, "Don't come back here expecting sympathy when life hits you hard again. You'll always be the same failure you were when you left." I stopped at the door and turned slowly, my voice steady and cold. "You know what's funny, Dad? This house you're yelling from, it's mine." He frowned, confused. "What the hell are you talking about?" I smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon enough." And then I walked out, holding my daughter close, while the walls that had once held all my pain echoed behind me one last time. That day, I promised myself something. No one would ever make my daughter feel the way they made me feel. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not anyone. They had no idea. The woman they called useless was about to take everything back. And I meant everything. When I drove away from that house, my hands were trembling. Not from fear this time, but from memories. The smell of the old wooden furniture, the creaking floorboards, the echo of my father's voice. They dragged me straight back to the nights I used to cry myself to sleep in that same house. I used to dream about running away. I'd imagine a little place where I could breathe without feeling like I owed anyone an apology for existing. My father was a strict man, the kind who thought authority meant cruelty. My mother, always silent, stood beside him, never defending, never protecting. My sister, Grace, was the golden child, perfect grades, perfect manners, perfect fake smile. And me? I was the disappointment, the one who never lived up to expectations. When I turned 18, my father kicked me out. "You're wasting space," he said, throwing my clothes in a trash bag.
I had no money, no job, no plan.
But I had one thing: anger. Quiet, burning anger that I carried like a spark in my chest. I took the first job I could find, cleaning tables in a diner downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I worked double shifts, slept 4 hours a night, and saved every dollar I could. I didn't talk to my parents, didn't call, didn't visit. And then one night, while I was mopping the diner floor, I overheard 2 regulars talking about how they'd flipped an old house for $100,000 profit. It hit me like lightning. Maybe that's my way out. I started reading everything I could about real estate. I'd sit in the diner after closing, scribbling notes from YouTube videos and real estate blogs, surrounded by the smell of grease and coffee. Within 2 years, I'd scraped together enough to buy a small rundown house on the outskirts of town. Everyone thought I was crazy, a waitress buying a property. But I saw potential. I painted, fixed, and remodeled it myself. I sold it 6 months later for triple what I'd paid. That was the moment I realized I didn't need anyone's approval. I just needed opportunity. From there, it snowballed. I started my own small company, AL Homes, named after my initials and the promise I made to myself: always learn. By the time I was 27, I owned multiple properties. By 30, I'd expanded to Florida, where the housing market was booming. I didn't flaunt it. I didn't post about it. I just worked, quietly, letting my success build walls where my past used to hurt. And when my daughter Lily was born, I swore that she'd never grow up feeling like I did. She'd know kindness, respect, and unconditional love. But life has a cruel sense of irony. My parents had fallen into hard times. My father's business had collapsed, and my sister's husband had left her. They reached out to me then, suddenly full of warmth and family love. And like a fool, I believed they'd changed. I bought them a home in my name, the same house I'd grown up in, and told them they could live there peacefully. I covered the bills, the mortgage, everything. I thought it was a chance to heal, to rebuild what was broken. But I was wrong. Over time, I noticed the subtle things. The way they ignored my calls, the way Grace posted pictures with captions like, "Some people buy love instead of earning it." But I didn't react. I told myself, stay calm. You're above it now. That was until today. Until I saw my daughter crying at that sink, repeating my childhood pain like history was looping in front of me. Driving back to my house in Florida, Lily sat in the back seat holding her teddy bear, her little hands still trembling. "Mommy," she asked softly, "why did Grandpa yell at me? Did I do something bad?" I glanced at her through the mirror, my heart shattering. "No, baby," I said gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. Some people just forget what love means." She nodded slowly, looking out the window. I could see the reflection of her tear-streaked face in the glass, the same eyes I once had. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about breaking the cycle. I thought back to every word, every insult, every cruel look I'd endured growing up. I'd forgiven them silently for years, thinking it made me stronger. But all it did was let them think they could keep hurting others, even a 6-year-old child. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I sat in my home office and opened my laptop. The Florida moonlight streamed through the glass walls. The documents on my screen glowed back at me. Ownership papers, property deeds, account transfers. Every signature, every payment, every right, all in my name. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't text them. I didn't warn them. I just opened the email to my lawyer and typed 6 words that ended generations of cruelty. Cancel all housing support immediately. Effective now. Then I hit send. The morning after I sent that email, the world outside looked calm. Bright sun, waves brushing against the sand, birds calling in the distance. But inside me, something had shifted. For the first time in years, I felt peace and power. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stared out at the ocean from my kitchen window. The quiet hum of my daughter's laughter in the other room reminded me why I did what I did. Then my phone started buzzing nonstop. First it was my mother, then Grace, then my father. I didn't answer any of them. By the fifth call, I switched the phone to silent. 3 days passed before I got the email from my lawyer confirming that the property's payments had been halted. "Ownership is entirely yours," he wrote. "They'll be notified by the bank within 48 hours. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there, letting the weight of it sink in. That house, the same house that had once suffocated me, was now officially mine again. Except this time it wasn't home. It was a statement. On the fourth day, my sister showed up at my Florida office. She walked in like she owned the place, sunglasses on, designer purse slung over her arm, her expression a mix of irritation and panic. "Amelia," she snapped. "What the hell did you do?" I leaned back in my chair, calm. "Hello to you too, Grace." She threw her sunglasses on my desk. "Don't play dumb. The bank called. They said the payment stopped. Dad and Mom are freaking out. The house is going to auction." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Good. Good," she shouted. "Are you insane? They'll lose everything." I looked at her, really looked at her. The flawless makeup, the manicured nails, the expensive clothes, all built on the comfort I had provided. "Everything," I said quietly. "You mean the house I paid for? The one they let my daughter cry in? The one where you stood there and did nothing?" Her expression faltered. "Amelia, you're overreacting. They didn't mean it like that." I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "Oh, so calling a 6-year-old useless is just parenting now." She sighed, pacing. "You always think you're better than everyone. You left and now you act like a saint because you got lucky." That word, lucky, burned deeper than she knew. "Lucky," I repeated softly. "I wasn't lucky when I was kicked out with nothing. I wasn't lucky when I worked 2 jobs to survive. I wasn't lucky when I built a business from scratch, while you all laughed at me.
No, gracias.
I earned every damn thing I have." She clenched her jaw. "There are parents, Amelia. You can't just destroy them." I stood up. My voice didn't rise, but it carried the weight of years. "They destroyed me first. And now they're trying to destroy my daughter. That ends now." For a moment, she just stared at me, and in her silence, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, not understanding, but fear. Because deep down, she knew I wasn't bluffing. She grabbed her purse and muttered, "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly. Maybe. But at least my daughter won't regret me. She left in a storm of perfume and slammed doors. That evening, I got a call from the bank. The property was officially listed for auction. 2 weeks later, I received a voicemail from my father, his voice trembling, something I'd never heard before. "Amelia, they're taking the house. You can't do this to your own family. You owe us that much after everything we did for you. After everything they did for me." I sat in silence, listening to that message over and over again, feeling this strange mix of sadness and satisfaction intertwining inside me. Then my mother called. I didn't pick up, but she left a message too. "Please, honey, your father's not well. We'll lose the only home we have." The irony almost made me laugh. It wasn't our home. It was mine, the home they'd poisoned with cruelty and favoritism, now returning to its rightful owner. The next week, the auction happened. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. But I watched the photos online, the for sale sign standing in front of that old house, the same porch where I used to sit alone as a child. My phone buzzed again, a text from Grace. "Are you happy now?" I stared at it for a long time.
Was I?
I typed back,
No.
"But I'm free." I set the phone down and walked outside to the beach, where Lily was building a sandcastle. Her laughter filled the air, soft and pure, a sound that no one could take away anymore. She looked up and smiled. "Mommy, look." I made us a house. I knelt beside her and smiled back. It's beautiful, sweetheart. The best house ever. She tilted her head. Can Grandma and Grandpa come? For a moment, I hesitated. Then I said softly, maybe one day, when they learn how to be kind. She nodded innocently, not understanding the depth behind my words. But that was okay, she didn't need to. That night, as I tucked her into bed, I whispered to myself, revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes, it's about building peace on the ashes of pain. But little did I know, the story wasn't over yet. Because the next morning my father showed up at my door. It was early morning when I heard the knock on my door. Firm, impatient, the kind that carried anger, not affection. I opened it to find my father standing there. He looked nothing like the man I remembered. His hair was thinner, his face pale, his clothes wrinkled and worn. The proud posture he always carried had crumbled into a slump. His eyes were red, not from rage, but from something else I'd never seen in him before, desperation. "Dad," I said quietly, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. He didn't respond right away. He just stood there, his jaw tightening as if trying to keep his pride from slipping. Finally, he said, "We need to talk." I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked in slowly, his eyes scanning the marble floors, the tall windows, the framed pictures of Lily smiling. Every detail seemed to irritate him, a reminder of the life I'd built without him. "Nice place," he muttered, bitterness dripping from his words. "Thanks," I replied evenly. "I worked for it." He sat down at the dining table, exhaling sharply. "They're taking the house, Amelia. Your mother's devastated. Grace won't stop crying. We've got nowhere to go." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You had somewhere to go. You had a home. You just ruined it." He slammed his fist lightly on the table. "Don't start that again. You think you're punishing us, but you're really punishing your own blood. Family doesn't do this." I let out a dry laugh. Family doesn't call a 6-year-old girl useless. Family doesn't make their own daughter feel worthless her whole life. And family sure as hell doesn't pretend to love someone only when they need money. He flinched, just slightly but enough for me to notice. "You've changed," he said after a moment, his voice softer now. "You've turned cold. I raised you better than this." That line, "I raised you better than this," broke something inside me. "Raised me?" I repeated, my voice trembling but strong. "You didn't raise me. You broke me. Every word, every insult, every time you told me I'd never be enough, that wasn't parenting. That was cruelty dressed as discipline." He looked down, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "We did what we thought was best." I took a step closer. "No, you did what was easy. You built Grace up by tearing me down. You made me feel like a failure, and now you're shocked I succeeded without you." He didn't respond. For once in his life, my father, the man who always had something to say, some cruel remark to make, sat in silence. After a long pause, he spoke, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard. "I didn't mean to yell at Lily. I was angry. I was frustrated. I swallowed hard. Frustrated enough to bully a child?" He looked up at me then, and for the first time, I saw regret in his eyes. "I just saw you and her. The same stubbornness. The same look in her eyes. I guess it reminded me of how much I failed as a father." The words hung in the air like smoke. "You failed," I said simply. "But you could have changed. You could have apologized. You could have treated her differently. But you didn't. You made her cry the same way you made me cry." He lowered his gaze again. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "It wasn't much. It wasn't enough. But it was something." For a second, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to remind him that an apology doesn't erase years of pain. But another part of me, the tired, bruised part that had carried this weight for so long, just wanted closure. I sighed, leaning against the table. "I'm not doing this to hurt you, Dad. I'm doing this to protect my daughter. She deserves better than what I got." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "So what now? You want us on the streets?" I looked out the window toward the beach, where Lily was playing with her sandcastle again.
No.
I just wanted you to understand what it feels like to lose something you thought would always be there. Maybe now you'll value people over pride. He didn't move,
Didn't argue.
just sat there, staring at the floor. After a moment, I walked to the counter and picked up an envelope I'd prepared the night before. I placed it in front of him. "What's this?" he asked. "The deed to a small house near Clearwater. It's fully paid off. Modest, but it's yours and Mom's if you want it. No strings attached. But I won't be covering your bills. You'll have to manage on your own." He stared at the envelope, then at me. "Why would you do this after everything?" I smiled faintly, because I learned that revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it means teaching people a lesson and still walking away with your peace intact. He looked down again, silent. Then he stood up slowly, taking the envelope with shaky hands. At the door, he turned and said, "I don't deserve your kindness, Amelia." I nodded. "No, you don't. But my daughter deserves to see her mother be better than what she came from." He hesitated, his mouth opening like he wanted to say more, but no words came. Instead, he just nodded and walked out. I watched from the window as he drove away, the morning sun glinting off his car. My chest felt heavy, but lighter. That house, the one that once haunted me, was gone. And maybe, just maybe, the ghosts went with it. A week after that confrontation, life began to feel normal again. Or, at least, a new version of normal. Lily and I fell back into our routines. Mornings were for pancakes, beach walks, and laughter. Evenings were for stories, snuggles, and the sound of waves crashing outside our window. For the first time in years, I felt calm.
No expectations. No insults.
No walking on eggshells.
Just peace.
But peace doesn't come without thoughts, memories that echo when the world quiets down. Sometimes, when Lily would fall asleep beside me, I'd stare at the ceiling and think about everything that happened. The yelling, the humiliation, the years of trying to prove myself to people who only saw what I wasn't. And then, I'd think about that day, the day I saw my father's face crumble under the weight of his own pride. It wasn't joy I felt then. It was freedom. Because revenge, I realized, isn't about making someone suffer. It's about reclaiming what they took from you, your power, your self-worth, your peace. A few days later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Hello." I answered cautiously. "Amelia?" It was my mother. Her voice was softer than I remembered, fragile, even.
Mom.
"I just wanted to say thank you," she said quietly. "For the house. For not letting your father's anger turn you cruel." I closed my eyes. "You could have stopped him, Mom. You could have protected me. Or Lily." Her breath trembled on the other end. "I know. I was scared. But I see it now. You did what none of us could. You broke the cycle." There was a long silence. For the first time, I didn't feel angry hearing her voice. Just sad for what could have been. "Take care of yourself," I said gently. "You too, Amelia. And tell Lily I'm sorry." When the call ended, I just stood there for a while, phone still in my hand, staring out at the horizon. The sky was painted in gold and pink, the kind of sunset that made you believe endings could be beautiful too. One evening, Lily and I were sitting on the porch, watching the tide roll in. She was holding a seashell up to her ear, giggling at the sound inside. "Mommy," she said suddenly, "why don't we go see Grandma and Grandpa anymore?" I smiled faintly. Because sometimes, sweetheart, people forget how to be kind. And until they remember, we love them from far away. She nodded, thoughtful, and leaned against me. "I like it better here, anyway." I kissed her forehead. "Me too, baby. Me too." Months passed, and little by little, life grew fuller. My interior design business expanded. Clients from across the country were hiring me for projects. I even started a small foundation that helped single mothers start over, giving them the same kind of support I once wished I had. And every time I helped someone find their footing again, I thought of Lily, of that tiny girl, standing on a stool, being yelled at for washing dishes the wrong way, of the pain that moment caused, and how it became the spark that lit everything I'd built since. One afternoon, I received a letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside, there was a short note. Amelia, I wanted you to know we sold the Clearwater house. We're moving to a smaller place near Tampa. Your mother's been volunteering at the local food drive, and I've started fixing old cars again. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just letting you know we're trying to be better people. Thank you for giving us a chance to learn that lesson. Dad. I read it twice, then a third time. And as I set it down, I realized something that made my chest tighten, not with pain but with peace. For years, I thought revenge was about payback, about making them feel the same hurt they gave me. But standing there, sunlight streaming through my window, I understood the truth. The real revenge was living a life they said I never could. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she smiled sleepily. "Mommy," she whispered, "are you happy now?" I brushed her hair from her face.
Yeah, sweetheart.
"I think I finally am." "Good," she mumbled, drifting off. "You deserve it." I sat there for a while, watching her breathe, her small chest rising and falling. Innocent, peaceful, safe. That's when it hit me. I didn't just break free from my parents' control. I broke the chain for every generation after me. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even, it's about moving on stronger. If you felt Amelia's journey, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us bring you more powerful stories like this one. Subscribe to Revenge Files and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that hits right where it hurts and heals where it matters.